Hello, 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 and welcome to another beautiful day in Bali and an exciting day because now we get into the details of the stuff that we discussed last time. Thank you for being here. My name is Sim, for those of you who don't know me. We're right now focused on basically building models that change the way that crypto is seen today and how it works today. In today's world, crypto is just a bunch of tokens that somebody creates somewhere and they tell you that they're going to do something in the future. And most people don't understand what they actually do. And so people put their money in, and then later on, like we're realizing right now, many of those tokens are worthless, and it's a scam being run on people by getting them to invest in things that VCs and other investors have more understanding about. And that's an age-old game that's been played. What we're doing is taking real-world valuable stuff and then turning it into tokens that are actually valuable and allowing people to invest in those. So today we're going to understand that whole value mechanism. How are things connected? How do you as an investor get value? How does the earth get value? How do people get value? How is the value exchanged all around? So I'm just going to reiterate some things from last time because there's going to be some people who just watched this video. Our concept of value is very simple. Value is the idea of improving somebody's life. That's it. In a verifiable way, if you can do something to improve good people's lives or animals' lives or improve the earth, those things are valuable. Anything else doesn't even make sense, right? And we've stored that value in the form of money because you do something to improve people's lives, people give you money, which they've got by improving somebody else's life, and that's the basic gist of it. So these technologies the blockchain technologies and Web3 and all these technologies that exist, they're here to improve people's lives. So it's up to us to build those solutions in ways that actually do it. And then even before that, we have to understand on a deep level what it is that we can do to improve people's lives, whose lives it's improving, and how there's a fairness to the whole process, right? Now, these projects we're going to look at, they're improving lives in very simple ways, right? On one side, they're focused on feeding people on many different scales. On the other side, they're focused on building systems that allow the system to serve the people rather than the people to serve the system. It's very interesting to think that our lives nowadays are controlled by algorithms, right? Our lives run on algorithms. For example, many of you probably got here with Google Maps. And Google Maps will tell you where to go, but that's just the route that it has chosen for you. That often isn't actually the most efficient route, believe it or not. It's a route that the government has said, make sure you send people down these roads and don't send them from these back roads, right? So an algorithm makes decisions for us and decides how we should live. Algorithms on social media are defining how our children's and our brains work, how our attention works, how our ability to absorb information works. Our view of reality is controlled by that. Right? And that's a scary concept if you fully understand it. That's just the beginning. We're about to transition to a world where every single piece of value that moves will move through. Within the next 8 years, you're going to see this transition where every time value moves, which is often in the form of money or currency or assets, it will move through a system that somebody coded. Right? Same thing with those algorithms. Somebody coded them to be that way. And eventually now the algorithms are coding themselves to be a certain way. So in this future that's upcoming, value will move through models, which will be coded by some people. And whoever codes those models will determine the value models. And the money that gets invested into those value models will determine which models win out. Okay? Our goal is to build models that we can verifiably say are built and coded to create real impact in people's lives and are built to serve people, rather than the other way around right now where people serve systems, right? There's a lot more things I could go into, but I'm not going to reiterate a lot of the stuff that we did last time. The other side of this whole process has been protecting wealth. That's why people have come to me from across the world, because they're concerned about the way that the world is going, and they're concerned that their hard-earned money is being destroyed by financial players doing things in the background. Like, for example, if you've held the euro for the last year, you've probably seen about 30% of your value get destroyed. The euro used to be worth X amount of dollars, now it's worth almost exactly $1. Same thing with the British pound. It used to be $2 per British pound. Now it's down to parity. So somebody who held the British pound and thought, hey, I'm holding cash, which is the safest thing, lost about 50% of their value. Not 50%, below 50%, but a vast majority of their purchasing power, their ability to go out and improve their lives and their families' lives, was diminished simply by sitting in currencies. So there's many people that have reached out and asked for help around that and said, hey, how can we, first of all, get our money out of these banks and put it somewhere where it's invested into assets? But we don't want to go out and buy stocks, which have been overblown over the last 20 years, especially tech stocks. We don't want to just put it into gold and sit on it. It doesn't seem to be moving. We don't want to just put it in one space. We want to enter this digital space, but we don't want to lose all of our money in the digital space, right? If we're losing money in cash, at least we know the rate that we're losing it at, and we know that at some point there's going to be some left and the numbers are still the same. But we don't want to enter the space and get into scammy FTT tokens or Luna or these things that most people just look at each other and go, why does anybody want this? Right? Why does anybody want this? I'm not going to put my life savings into this. This doesn't even make sense to me. And to be honest, if something does not make sense to you, do not put your money in it. That's just a rule of investing, right? Invest in things that you can absorb and understand that are part of your worldview. And if they're not, learn about them. And if they still don't make sense, then they're probably a scam, okay? So when you're thinking about protecting wealth, right? Our simple solution is back the tokens by real businesses. It's a pretty simple solution. That's how stocks work, right? You invest in a stock, you analyze the company, you know what the company does. You can tell, okay, how much demand is there for this thing that the company does, and then you invest in it because there's a company that improves people's lives and it makes money. Some of that money gets paid out to the investors who've invested in the company. That same model is what we're bringing here. And we're backing it with stuff that to us is even more important than just investing in apps and companies and things like that. That's one piece. You protect wealth by investing in things that actually improve people's lives. The second piece is these projects are projects that we run ourselves. So this isn't like we're investing in some other company and hoping that they actually do the right things with the money. These are our own people, our own teams. We have complete clarity on and visibility on what's being done with the money and how it's being deployed. And then also the code itself and how the systems run and how they improve people's lives and how there's fairness in the practices. All of that is being done by us. Because at this point, I don't really trust FTX to do it for me. I don't really trust banks to do it for me. I don't trust governments to do it for me. It's up to us to actually build the solutions. Okay, so that's another way that we're protecting wealth. The other thing I've already mentioned, but it's getting out of currencies. When you think about currencies, what a currency is it's a value exchange mechanism that allows you to operate within a country. It allows you to go improve somebody's life by doing something that's valuable to them. They give you currency, which is not money, okay? They give you currency, whichever currency you have, and you are able to take that currency and go out and get something to improve your life, your family's life, or whatever. That is supposed to be stable, but as we realize now, the meltdown of the currencies that's happening is happening because there's people out there who are effectively stealing value from other people. Bankers, giant institutions, FTX. They're figuring out scams to be able to take people's money. And governments have done this, and countries have done this to a point where storing your money in currencies doesn't even make sense anymore. The US dollar has lost about 40% of its value. It's lost 98 point something percent of its value since its launch, like purchasing power. That's why something used to cost cents to buy at some point, and now it costs dozens of dollars to buy. That's because it's lost most of that purchasing power and most of that value. But in the most recent times, we've seen that accelerate at a massive pace, right? So getting out of currencies and getting into assets is something very important in this timeline, and I've harped on about it for years and years. So most of you, I'm not going to just beat a dead horse, right? The other kind of way to protect wealth from this old system is to get out of the old system, right? The old system is companies that are set up with the singular goal of extracting as much value from the earth and people as possible, at the detriment of people, at the detriment of the earth, at the detriment of humanity and society. right? And that value was that value model was incentivized, right? Because investors would invest and they want to make the maximum returns at all cost. And that's the world that we're coming from. This future world we're going into, we have the potential to invest in ways where it does not completely rape and pillage people. It can be built in a way where we can actually fairly treat people, fairly treat the earth, and make that profitable, right? So that's one of my favorite ways of actually protecting wealth, by putting it somewhere where it adds value to people's lives, but it also improves the world around us, which is true wealth, right? Wealth isn't just money. Wealth is a better life for our children, a better life for 7 generations down from us, and knowing that we built that world, and going to sleep knowing that we did that. Now, the problem's already gone over, but I'll just reiterate. The problems that exist in crypto today, most of these things are scams. We've been, screaming from the rooftops, most of them are scams. Custom-built scams to trick people into entering a new space of investing in ways that don't make sense, and there's nothing valuable behind them. They're just taking investor money and giving it to other people, and they come up with complex models to confuse you into that process, right? So the tokens themselves are fake. Those tokens don't have a verifiable value. If you go out and check, like, why is this thing worth this price? The only answer that comes back is speculation. People are trading it. People want to get rich off of it, so there's people dumping money, the value goes up, then eventually everybody loses faith, like we're seeing today. They collapse, but there's no actual verifiable value behind it because they don't actually add value to people's lives yet. Many of them will. Most of them won't. Over 90% won't. They'll just steal people's money and run away. The other thing that we're noticing now is there's no transparency. Blockchain's supposed to be this transparent, open, world where there's freedom to be able to see what's going on. There's no transparency. We just found out FTX didn't even have an accounting team. They had $32 billion, $32,000 million. And they didn't even have an accounting team. Did we know that? No. Did the people who put their life savings into it to try to make money know that? No. And they gave the money to another company, who gave that money to another company, who gave that money to another company, and everybody's making returns and yields along the way. And we have no idea, right? There's no transparency. There's no liability. There's no transparency. There's nothing that's keeping them honest in this process. And that needs to change. The other problem, the biggest problem for me, is that problem of the extractive nature of systems that exist in this old world. They do not care about people. They do not care about lives. They do not care about the impact that they create. They don't care at the cost of everything. They just take everything that they can out and make the most amount of money and poison the earth. And that's apparently how it's supposed to work. Now, the good thing is, the world is now transitioning towards a direction where we're all realizing, hey, this is not cool. Even the companies, it's a very technical term. This is not cool. Okay. This is the blockchain language. Even giant investment firms like BlackRock are realizing, hey, we can't just keep doing this. Taking money and putting it to stuff that destroys the earth is a zero-sum game, and eventually we run out of everything, and then we all go to shit. Right? So the world has transitioned towards these models. As we mentioned before, we've had the chance to shop this around to many of these big players, and when they see this, you can see their lights go off in their head. They can see, hey, this is a new way of doing things. This makes a lot more sense. It's fair for everybody. And this is something that we could actually invest in because it meets all of our mandates of, protecting the earth, investing in a social impact way, real world value generation models that give a solid return to investors, but not at the cost of the people whose backs it's running on, right? So in simple terms, farmers love it, because we're going to talk about farmers specifically today in these two projects. Farmers love it because they get capital without debt. Okay, debt is one of the biggest problems in farmers' lives. Like Sabdil mentioned, there was a farmer who took debt on his land to be able to farm when his kid was born, and he was still paying off the debt when his kid went to university. Like, that's how debt works. That is this trap that keeps farmers trapped. So with our systems, they can access capital, foreign capital, from investors from across the world in a seamless way without generating debt. That's a huge one. They can also access global markets, because one of the other reasons why the farmers are in debt and they're marginalized is because they don't know how to access markets that exist overseas. We're making that functional and turning it into an app with a button on it. So they'll be able to access markets without having to think about any of that stuff. They get compensated fairly instead of them being completely raped effectively, and they grow all the food, and then the middleman comes and takes it. Usually the loan shark who gave the loan comes and takes it at pennies on the dollar because the farmer is desperate to pay back the loan. They don't get compensated fairly. The person who ships it to the factory usually gets all the money. And then the factory makes most of the money actually and develops the product, which I'm not against. If a factory turns some raw materials into higher value products and sends it forward, okay, that's how factories work. But the people not compensating the farmers is not okay. Because, you know, like we mentioned before, farmers are the backbone of society. Without farmers, this whole thing doesn't work, right? They also don't have access to these technologies. These farmers are farmers. People are people. They have no idea how to access these technologies and use them. Even the complexity of just getting into tokens and things is so complicated these days that most people don't touch it. We're making that simple for them. And then all of that results in a better quality of life for farmers. So that's why farmers love this. And one of the big ways that these things are different is we're not taking the stuff from the farmers, right? We're not taking everything from whoever owns it in these models. We are, in Sumati, we're taking a piece. For farmers, we're just helping them get their farm productivity out to people without taking the land itself. For Farmsent, it's not taking the supply chain from the middleman. It's just making it more efficient in the process. So it's not taking, it's actually giving more and bringing more foreign capital to be able to be deployed into these systems. And we're also figuring out ways so that the systems themselves are not considered securities. Because one of the problems that happens in the world is people are taking farms and tokenizing them, and then it turns into a security which violates securities regulations if you don't register it, and the cost of registering it goes through the roof. We figured out ways to have legally compliant systems which don't have to be always registered as securities. We'll register some of them as securities depending on how the projects come in, but we're not going to have to register all of them as securities, but still be compliant with all the global regulations. We're also focused on the people, right? I don't know why that isn't the way that things are done, but we're focused on the people. We think about what the people have in their lives. We think about the problems they have in their lives. We think about better solutions to those problems, but it's all focused on the people themselves, feeding the people, increasing their quality of life, and just building systems that are at their fundamental level focused on that process, right? This one I really love. We're making protecting the earth and protecting people profitable. That's how you change the world, right? You make it profitable to do it the right way. You make more profit if you protect the earth. You make more profit if you help people, and you make more profit if you keep humanity, you improve humanity in whichever way possible, right? Because profit is not the problem. It's the greed for profit at all costs. That's the problem across the world, and that's what we're fixing. Right? It's also, I love saying this part, it's automating impact. It's automating impact. Because in the old world, you would build a system, and it's like, we have this amazing idea, Google, do no evil, right? Remember, they started with do no evil. That was their like motto. Then they had to change it. They're like, do a little bit of evil, but like mostly don't do evil. And then they changed it to, oh, we're evil. We're hella evil, right? That's a joke, but that's the truth of what happens. When humans come in with ideologies and they hand it over to other humans who are profit motive focused only, those humans change the system and there's nobody to stop them from changing the systems, right? Companies pivot all the time. Whereas with these systems, it's coded, right? When we write the code and launch the thing, you can't change the code. I don't care who you are. If you come in, you want to make more money, sorry, the code says you can't. Okay, if Bitcoin miners want to come in and charge more fees, you can't. It's coded into the system. You participate from the beginning. And then when we die, whoever takes over these systems, they will have to follow the same rules. So impact and fairness is coded into the system. Now, we got to make sure we code it properly. And then there's audits on the code, and everybody can check it to make sure it's all done properly. And when the system runs itself, it proves that fairness out. But after that, there's no There's no taking away the impact and then changing your motto and then making trillions of dollars. In simple terms, and I've said this before, asset-backed tokens are the future, is the next wave. I've gone through so many of these collapses that if you're new to crypto and you're like, oh my God, panic. Yeah, it's a Tuesday. It's a Tuesday that comes after a Monday. And you know, you came here on a Friday and the party was happening on a Friday and you're like, oh my God, everybody's partying, everybody's getting rich. Now you're here on a Tuesday, which is not looking too well. It's just how the week goes, right? Things go up, everybody gets exuberant, runs in, thinks they're all gonna get rich. This entire room fills out. We have to get bigger places. And then things crash, and then everybody gets mad and angry. But this is how the growth of new technologies happens, right? Like .com bubble, it was like tens of thousands of companies saying they're gonna come change the world. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do that. They shot up in valuations to ridiculous valuations, billions and billions of dollars for websites that hadn't even been built yet. And then what happened? .com bust. You know, .com bubble popped, everything crashed. Amazon went from $100-something down to $5. Most of those companies died. They lost most people's money. On the other side, the real value models took over the earth. Fundamentally took over the entire planet. And it was like 7 years. It took 7 years from complete collapse to complete revolution of the world. And then iPhone launches, and within 5 years, every single person had it in their hands. And we fundamentally shifted how the world operates on every single scale. So that was a 20-year timeline, technically, to go from ideation, crash, take over the world. The way these technologies go, they actually accelerate in their adoption. So this technology, it's already been here for 13 years, and most people thought it was shit. Within the next 7 to 8 years, you're going to see the revolution of the models, and that's what we're here to experience in a good way. The other thing that these models, that I really love about these models, is they are synergistic, right? It's instead of just doing one thing in one corner with one team in one place, if you bring projects together that are all working together on a similar mission, you share the resources, you share the impact, and they become synergistic. That accelerates them. That as an investor, that also takes down your risk in that process, okay? So before I go into the rest of the spiel about what investors love it, governments love it and stuff, let's just look at what exactly it is that we're doing, right? These models that I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the previous video, I'd really appreciate you watching that. There's a lot of detail in that. That was our Explain It Like I'm 5 video. It simplifies it down to quite a bit. But in simple terms, 5HarvestO is a project where it is backed by farm productivity. Okay, so can we bring up the 5HarvestO model? Please and thank you. So this is how 5HarvestO adds value. Each one of these lines is value. Depending on which way the arrow goes, the value is flowing that way. Okay? 5HarvestO is a system that takes farm productivity and turns it into an NFT and puts it onto a website. Okay? Now, right now, as an equity investor, you're going to invest in the company itself. So when any money is invested into a company, you get a share of the company, right? Right now, we're selling 5% of the company itself. What you also get, which is different from shares, is you also get something called a SAFT, Simple Agreement for Future Tokens, which means not only do you get equity, you will be issued founders tokens when they launch at the lowest price that they launch at, which are actually included with your investment, so you don't pay extra for them. And those tokens will pay you back dividends from whatever money 5HarvestO makes. That's a simple, I didn't want to complicate this too much and put tokens and stuff. This is the actual 5HarvestO model. But the way the tokens work is if you hold the tokens and you stake the tokens, some of the money that the business makes will be paid out to you the same way dividends are paid out in any time. As a pure equity investor, as the business grows, your equity grows, and you can sell it at a later time and make more money that way. That's a pretty simple value proposition. So that's this. Equity investors investing in 5HarvestO. As all of this grows the business, that value goes back to the equity investors, and you can make an exit. We are going to go public with this company a few years down the road in Indonesia ideally. And at that point, you can make an exit or you can actually sell it along the way. It's your call. Now, if I had to draw tokens out on this, it would be basically another loop where it would complicate this too much. And I like beautiful models. Okay, but the simple idea is when you get those tokens, which will not be launched tomorrow, we are going to wait until end of 2023 to 2024 to launch tokens when regulations become clear and we know exactly how to structure the tokens properly. We're not going to launch them right now to try to get money from investors for no reason. That equity will allow us to run this business. It's already a running business. It's already functional. It's already been run with our own money. But to scale this business, the investment will be used to scale the business. And the business is simple. NFT investors buy NFTs that 5HarvestO has made from farm productivity. Let's take an example. There's a hectare of rice that a farmer has, and that farmer has the option, so that farmer is not going to get any money from that hectare of rice until the harvest happens. But they need money right now to feed their kids. So the normal practice is they'll go out to a loan shark and take a loan at 20% or higher to feed their kids today, and they'll promise to pay that loan shark back at the end of the harvest. What we do is we actually help that farmer turn their farm productivity into an NFT. We're not taking the farm from them. They're not turning the actual farm into an NFT. They're turning the productivity of the next harvest into an NFT, which goes on the website. An investor comes along and buys that NFT. And the great thing about that NFT is it has, let's say you say, I'm investing $10,000 to have rights to the productivity of this hectare of land. That hectare of land has a minimum amount of productivity that it should have. The productivity varies, but there's a minimum amount of productivity that the land has. That money that you invest as an NFT investor will go directly to the farmer. So the farmer does not have debt. They get money without debt. What you get is an NFT that is a promise to pay you back your initial capital plus 45% of the profits from this next cycle. We'll do you even one better. Okay? If the productivity of that land is lower than the minimum productivity, which rarely happens in Indonesia, but it can happen. If that productivity is below the minimum of that productivity, which is determined by the government, we have insurance to cover the investor for that minimum amount that's promised back to the investor themselves. So if you, let's say $10,000, I buy the productivity of a hectare. I'm just giving an example for numbers. If the minimum productivity should give you back $2,000 at the end of the season or at the end of the harvest, and the productivity ends up being $1,600 for you, the insurance will cover you up to $2,000 and give you back $12,000 at the end of the 6 months, which is usually the harvest season. What that means is this NFT, it's not the value of the NFT. Like you could trade it to people if you want. It's your call to trade the NFT. But the value of the NFT is not the NFT. The NFT is just the right to getting $12,000 back in 6 months, right? And it's covered. So even if the market value of the NFT drops or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, if it goes above $12,000, it's smart to sell it to somebody else because they're going to get $12,000 at the end of 6 months. But no matter what, at the end of the 6 months, when you give back that NFT to 5HarvestO, they will take that profit from the farm itself and give it to you. 45% goes to the farmer, 45% goes to the investor, and 10% goes to 5HarvestO themselves. And we don't take any money up front. We're not causing more debt on the farmer. All of the money from the investment goes to the farmer. When the farmer makes money, everybody makes money in this process. So the farmer produces commodities, let's say rice in this case. They put it into the supply chain. The supply chain, in this case, will send it off to Farmsent. We're going to discuss that in a second. But the sales from the supply chain will be given back partially to the investors themselves and partially to farmers again, right? And this isn't something that's obligatory. This is farmers signing up themselves because they see that they make more money this way than taking debt and making money that way. Now, here's one of my favorite parts about this whole model. Farmers don't just produce commodities. When you produce 5 tons of rice on a piece of land, you produce 2.5 tons of actual rice, dehusked rice, and you produce 2.5 tons of waste, organic waste, which is husk, which is as good as garbage here. So what farmers do is the only thing they know how to do is put it in a pile and light it on fire, okay? And that produces pollution that basically wastes something that could be useful. So what we're going to do, this is not something that's live yet, but this is the plan. We're going to take that organic waste and we're going to turn it into biochar. Biochar is when you just cook it without oxygen and it turns into a natural fertilizer, which farmers have a hard time buying fertilizer. It's actually getting expensive and many of them can't even access it, and the soils are being degraded because it's constantly the nutrients are being pulled out and they're not fed back in. We're going to take that waste, turn it into biochar, and give it back to the farmers. So now we're replacing chemical fertilizers with natural fertilizers. The smoke that's produced from cooking that material, you can actually cool it down and turn it into a natural pesticide. So then you get rid of pesticides, which are horrible, and then you give that back to the farmers. So the farmers don't have to buy pesticides at ridiculous prices and poison our food, which all of us eat. All of that generates carbon credits. I love this world we're going into. All of this, getting rid of garbage, getting rid of chemical fertilizers, and getting rid of pesticides, turns into carbon credits. And if you don't understand carbon credits, basically when we can verifiably show that this carbon from this process from burning this is not going into the environment, there are companies that will give us carbon credits because they need carbon credits to be able to function. And we can sell those carbon credits for cash to other companies and put that cash into farmers' pockets and fund this whole system. So you now have a profit motive to not burn waste, to get rid of fertilizer, and get rid of pesticides. Investors have a profit motive to support farmers. Farmers have a profit motive to do both of these things. Everybody's incentivized to do things that are better for the world. And all of this is going to be automated and digitized to a degree. Like, we can't automate burning things, but it's going to be automated to a degree. Now, this is just this system itself, right? So equity investors get a piece of the company, NFT investors will get an NFT with returns from the profits themselves. The beauty of the synergy of these systems is this supply chain, which, by the way, we're also running this supply chain. We've actually started the investment process into this supply chain where we're going to have our own warehouses, our own places that make sure that there's no 16 middlemen taking money in the middle, so we can compensate farmers fairly back. This supply eventually will be sent to Farmsent. So let's go to the next model. So Farmsent's model is simple, it's beautifully simple. Basically, those farmers that are producing the commodities, they're providing it into Farmsent's system. And Farmsent is like a marketplace. It's a marketplace that has buyers from the Middle East and North Africa right now, Saudi, Bahrain, Dubai, Kuwait, and Oman. And there's going to be more countries coming online. Those buyers need food. Those buyers need commodities. So they are right here. The farmer simply goes into an app and clicks, I have X tons of dehusked rice. Those commodities are provided to the farmers, to the Farmsent system, and it simply provides it into the commodity supply chain, which is what we just discussed. And then the buyers buy it from that chain on the blockchain. So it's just a simple system. Farmers enter it into the app, and buyers can go in the app and buy it, right? As an equity investor, you're investing in Farmsent and getting a percentage of the business itself and the SAFT for a future, simple agreement for future tokens. So you get future tokens that you would pay out. Basically, the Farmsent token will do the same thing. Some of the yield that comes in from these commodity sales will be provided to the Farmsent token, and whoever has the Farmsent token will be provided those yields. And since the equity investors are the ones who actually are being promised tokens right now, those equity investors will get dividends or yields from a real world business making money. That's a pretty simple system. Now, I was going to say something, now I forgot what I was going to say. Farmsent isn't selling things at Indonesian prices, right? Like Yoga mentioned, vanilla in its high season sells here for $3. Vanilla in any season, wholesale, sells in the Middle East for $28. A farmer cannot access the Middle East. They only know how to access the middleman who always takes the vanilla from them. That middleman sends it to a warehouse, sends it to another middleman who sends it to a warehouse, and the warehouse ships it out to the Middle East and makes 25 out, whatever, 20 of those dollars basically. We're changing that. So then more value can actually go back to the farmers. If you're making $28, why can't we pay farmers $10 for their vanilla? And when you mention this to farmers, they cry. Well, first they think you're an idiot because they're like, that doesn't make sense. They're like, why, Mr. Boulay, are you going to buy my vanilla for $10? It's only $3. It's like, no, in this market it's $3 because there's an overabundance of vanilla. Because the way that harvests happen is there's a season, there's a harvest, and now there's too much vanilla in the streets basically. So what those middlemen do is they actually buy it during low season, hold it in a warehouse, wait until the prices go back up, and then they ship it out to the world, right? Whereas this system, it's live. It instantly pops up, and the Middle East is happy to buy it for $28 at any time because they sell vanilla at $50 or whatever they sell it at. So more value goes back to the farmers. Now, whenever you see these loops, those are value loops, right? So it's like when Farmsent makes money from the buyer by adding value to them by feeding their kids in the Middle East because they have food security problems. They add value to farmers who are happy that they got more value added. They add value by producing commodities. That adds value to Farmsent, and the loops just run. Same thing for investors. When you buy equities, you get tokens, and you add value to Farmsent, which runs the system. That value then flows back to the investors. That value flows back through the token. Well, technically, it flows back like this, through the token, and money gets paid back. And then you know what these investors do? They're like, thank you for making me money. Here's the money back. We go, thank you so much. And we hand it to the farmers again, and the whole thing runs over time. Am I saying you're going to get rich tomorrow? Never. This is not a get rich quick scheme. This is a don't get poor slowly scheme. All of our schemes are like that. Okay? It's protecting what you have and growing it in a way that adds value. And these are businesses, so they actually take time to build. But this is a simplified version of that. I put investors in there, but this is the official model. Farmers enter a system that has quality checks built in, everything put onto the blockchain, has an existing supply chain, a physical supply chain, has payments processing on both sides, so it can take Indonesian rupiah and turn it into Kuwaiti dinar and then convert it back. Does all of that for farmers simply. So they just click a button, the buyer clicks a button, we take care of the rest of it, and there's not 100 people taking money along the way because they're taking care of paperwork and stuff. A simple system. Now, the cool thing is, the farmers getting more money from this system means they pay a higher return to the investors in 5HarvestO, right? If we're now incentivized, Farmsent is now more incentivized to pay a higher amount of value to the farmers so that the farmers can pay out a higher amount of value to their investors so the investors give them back more money, right? Incentive structures. All right, so now, does this make sense? Perfect, thank you. Now, these are just two of the projects that we're incubating inside of Sumati Incubator, okay? Because bringing these things to fruition takes a lot of time, energy, and resources and expertise, and we're bringing all of them under the same roof, and it's being called the Sumati Incubator. It's going to be run out of the Bali Blockchain Center for now, and eventually our own physical locations across Bali and across the world. That incubator, this is a simple model of that incubator. This projects like 5HarvestO and Farmsent and many other impact projects that come into a pipeline asking for help from Sumati Incubator to come to fruition. They need help because they don't know how to actually run businesses. Sumati adds value by incubating those projects. And incubation is a simple idea that you take an idea that's semi-built or at a certain scale, and you take it to fruition and you help them execute that business idea itself. That adds value to the projects. That's why they're doing this in the first place. Those projects promise up to 8% of the tokens and 8% of the equity of the project itself to the incubator. So this company, Sumati Incubator, custodies or is the owner of the equity and the tokens from those projects. And these tokens earn a yield from their businesses, remember? They pay the token holders, which means there's a yield coming to Sumati, which will go through the Sumati token and pay the yield here. So in simple terms, as we feed more projects in from here and bring them to fruition, and they're all impact projects that actually meet our mandate of improving the world, and we incubate them, more and more tokens and more value gets added into Sumati. So effectively, Sumati is a investment vehicle, for lack of a better word. Legally, no. Legally, it's just a company. But in these new models, Sumati becomes a vehicle where more and more value gets added into the system. So the equity investors, as more and more equity gets added in, the project itself or the value of the company itself grows. For the token holders, which in this case, the equity investors are going to get tokens as well, but the token holders are getting the yield that's coming from all of these businesses. And both of those, the yield from this is going to be used partially to fund Sumati itself, and the investments are going to be used to partially fund Sumati itself. But it's just the same loops that we're talking about. Sumati adds value to projects. Projects add value to investors in Sumati, which gets shared fairly, loops back around again, and we make like an infinity sign. Now take a deep breath. I'm about to show you something very complicated. Can you go to the next one? This is what Sumati runs like internally. These are all the different, these aren't even all of them. I didn't get time to update these because I didn't have time. I was helping people get off exchanges lately. But this is a representation of how Sumati has a shit ton of different value mechanisms built into it. As an incubator, you need to do a lot of things for a lot of different projects. So where do we start first? Let's start at the top. Can you zoom into the top, please? So these are just some of the investor networks that are social impact investor networks that we already have access to. We, in this group, are right here. But we also have many different investor networks. This one's from the Middle East. This one is a capital raise network from here. This one is connected to them, Bali Investment Club. This one is Josie, she's sitting in the room. That's Leeson, she's sitting right there. You know, Yog reaches out to the Middle East. Cleveland has his own global investor network. VCs, I didn't even want to list out because there's just too many of them, but we've spoken to a ton of them and they're all interested in entering the space. And we have other friends who have their own networks who are interested in participating in this whole process, because that investment is what makes all of this stuff function in the first place. Let's zoom out. Let's go to partners. So not only is there an investor network, there's an actual network of different partners. So we obviously have a law firm. This is our consulting firm. Diverse is also one of the best marketing agencies, media marketing agencies in the Middle East that raises their digital asset focused marketing agency. We have a Global Strategic Partnership Association is our NGO effectively. That is an association that's going to get funding from different associations to be able to fund this. That's right now working with US, but it's going to be, our goal is to get it live in these other places as well. Sendwire is our partner to help convert to cash or fiat. Unstoppable Domains we have a relationship with. Farmsent is focused on the Silicon Valley side and getting investment and partnerships from that side. 4Spots is the media and marketing agency owned by the founder of Farmsent, Yog. So we have an in-house marketing agency and media agency effectively. We have relationships with exchanges that we can use that have all shown interest, and there should be a couple more that want to enter these kind of spaces. There's government relationships, which I've already mentioned multiple times, but Norway, US, Dubai, Bahrain, Saudi, Oman, Kuwait now, Indonesia, all these governments are interested in this stuff because this is solving core issues for governments. Zoom out. This whole, and the expert side of things has grown in a massive way, but we have our own security teams, effectively hackers, that can make sure that everything is built in a way that's secure. We have in-house devs that we already have, but we actually have partners that we're going to be working with for development. For marketing, Diverse and 4Spots, like we talked about. For design, 4Spots is going to be handling that. This incubator, like I mentioned last time, but I'll say it again, is not just incubating projects. That's a secondary function. It's incubating people, right? Because there's that quote, you don't build a business, you build your people, and your people build your business, right? And we're in Bali, so we're all about building people and developing their states. So well-being is a huge part of that whole process. So nutrition, coaching, spiritual healing, creative development, optimization, biohacking, all of these things are going to be is support that we provide in the incubator itself to the people who may be coming from places where that's just not how they do things. Extractive systems where we're adding value to the systems. A huge piece of this is mentoring. Again, I haven't had time to update this, but we have a laundry list of mentors and experts who are going to work with projects to facilitate all of these things. Many of them are adding their time up front. Many of them believe in this mission and they're going to be supporting the process, and then they get to actually meet projects and get familiar with what's going on and meet the teams. And then those projects will go back and hire those same people to actually do work, right? Zoom out. Now this side is one of my favorite sides. I mean, all the sides are my favorite, but this one is really close to my heart. So not only is Sumati adding value to projects and everybody in the chain, a huge social impact part of Sumati Incubator is that we are working with governments, specifically the Indonesian government, specifically the central government and city of Denpasar, to develop the talent in the country and in the cities. That's a huge way for us to give back. In a simple representation, the city of Denpasar has basically given us a building, and they're going to be bringing talent and youth from universities and other places to add into this pipeline. Our friend Farmsent is in Silicon Valley, and they're specifically focused on metaverse and XR technology development education, who's going to be providing that. The central Indonesian government has programs called DigiTalent and 1,000 Startups, and they're going to feed in talent and people who are interested in entering these spaces from here, who are going to be put through an education program, a digital talent education program, startup talent education program. One of our partners and friends is starting a registered certified university from Australia to educate people in Indonesia around these technologies, certify them, and then they come into our talent development program for Sumati. They become interns, they get put into projects right next to the best talent from across the world who know how to run and build world-class projects. And that develops the human capital and the people of Indonesia in technologies where there isn't enough development in the first place. And this stuff is already live in many ways. We're just connecting them together. And that's also why we're going to be transitioning these talks to Bali Blockchain Center soon, because we are now going to start operating from the city of Denpasar. So that is developing people, giving them opportunity, and then attracting the best talent from across the world to come to Bali and stay here, and increasing the value, which adds value to the whole thing. And then this piece is a really cool piece. So this is a way that an incubator goes beyond just an incubator. I mean, this is a huge way that an incubator is more than just an incubator. It's a talent development pipeline. Because we have experts who are doing a lot of these things, which are very valuable, like tokenization, right? Everything needs to be tokenized. Maybe there's projects that come in that don't need to be incubated, but they need tokenization. We will offer tokenization as a service through the incubator, and that will be revenue generating for the incubator itself. Chief Metaverse Officer. It's a thing that just is popping up now, and there's many people who need it, but they don't know where to get it. We're going to be providing CMOs. We're going to be providing CMOs as a service. Sabdo, one of our founders, has licensing as a service, because licensing is so hard in this country. Sumati Incubator is going to be providing licensing as a service. And that's for projects that don't even have to go through the whole pipeline. They just need a specific piece of help. Even helping them raise capital. Actually, that goes into, can you go to this corner, please? Top left corner. Beyond just the incubator side of things, we've also realized that there's a lot of projects that are beyond incubation. They're at acceleration, or they need, specific support in certain areas. They effectively just need a launch pad to launch, right? They've already done much of the work up front. Like Real Earth Elements is a good example of that. We've taken them through a lot of this process. They might just come into the launchpad process. So projects would come in, they're provided counseling, they're provided with whichever resources that they need to make that process happen. Then they're connected to our investors, and we're able to launch those projects, which becomes a revenue generation point for Sumati as well. Did that confuse everybody? Confused me, trust me. It took like weeks for me to understand what this is, right? So this is, hopefully you can understand that this, first of all, isn't our first rodeo. We built a lot of startups before, successful startups. But secondly, this is how you make circular economies. When I keep saying loops, can we go up, please? No, like move the whole thing up, yeah, and zoom out a little bit, a lot bit. Thank you. If I was to truly draw loops, everything would be a loop. Design adds value to projects. This adds value here. That adds value there. It would just become infinite loops. And that's my idea of a circular economy, where value flows out to somebody whose life gets improved, who gives value back, and that whole process just runs. We're improving governments' lives, our partners get business, businesses get launch pads, investors get investment vehicles that are safe and protected, talent gets opportunity and development. We all get value from developing the people around us and giving back to Bali and the rest of the world. The businesses here get value, they add value back. All of these different pieces are adding value to the systems themselves, and then they get business. So it's basically incentivizing everybody to help everybody else, most of it being run on the blockchain, right? With people in the most important parts, because we don't just run everything by algorithms. We got people making decisions, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. Now, what I would really love to do is now bring up the founders. So is Sabdo on the line? Let's get Sabdo up there. Let's put the model back up, please and thank you. Sabdo's the 5HarvestO, the first one, 5HarvestO model. And then Sabdo is going to go through some of the finer details around the numbers and returns from the 5HarvestO business itself. Pak Sabdo.
Halo. Yes,
Apa
brother.
kabar?
Baik. What we got, the profit from the 5HarvestO is from selling the yield of the five commodity. So I will share my website. So guys, basically, like you see in our website, like now we already have like 5 commodity. We already have contract to selling it, but it's still in locally in Indonesia. So I'm just using like IDR, but maybe when we already have running with Farmsent, the pricing will be just getting better, I think, because this will be in the local pricing. So just maybe just like taking like maybe like 5% profit from its harvesting, because in Indonesia there are not, the pricing is not too high, but this is what we want to give to the farmer, not the highest pricing, but the stable pricing and a years. Because the problem in Indonesia is usually the pricing for the its yields or its commodity, it will be going down like twice in a year. So sometimes the farmer getting nothing. So they just like put their yield, get back to the land, as they will be let the yield become rotten and become like organic fertilized, because they don't have enough money to buy fertilizer anymore. This is the problem is. So probably I will be like give like one sample for the rice. For 1 hectare rice, basically we will be need like 22 million rupiah. Million rupiah is like juta, not a billion. And then probably we can get like around but there is this, we can get like around maybe like 20% probably, if we have a good pricing and we also have like good harvesting. The minimum we can get until now is like X ton for 1 hectare, but the biggest we can get is like a 12 hectare in a hectare. So it's like quite different, because the yield is not always same, because like in other place we have like around one, maybe like now we already have like 3,600 hectare land all around in Indonesia. So it's like separate in like right now it's only like 4 province in Indonesia. This is for the rice, and the difference is in the Java and in the Bali, we can have like 4 times harvesting in 1 year for rice. But in outside Java, probably they can only have like 2 times a year for a yield, because there are some irrigation land and not irrigated land. So they just waiting for the rain coming down, and then they're starting to harvest, or they're starting to plant. And also, like for example, for the melon itself, we can get like for amount of 100 to 25 million rupiah, we can get like on 25 ton one time harvest, with the pricing is like around like 6,000 till 10,000 rupiah a kilo. So yeah, we can get like more from the fruit actually. And then we also will be using the insurance, but like Sim says, the insurance for the commodity is only can get for rice and for the corn, but for the melon and peanut and shrimp, we can get insurance for our capital. So they can, if we have failed to with our plantation, and then the insurance will be coming and getting our capital back.
If we understand correctly, when you buy the NFT, that gives you the rights to the revenue or the profits, 45% of the profits from the next yield. Each one of the commodities have different harvests in different regions. Rice can be harvested 4 times in a year in the Java and Bali region, which is where we're focusing on first. And the minimum amount of yield from that rice is insured, rice and corn is insured by insurance that we pay for in this whole process. So the investors' returns are insured, right? And did you mention that for the rice, it's potential around 20-ish% returns? Is that what you said?
So yeah, basically we can get like around, for example, if the pricing for the rice is like 4,500, and we can get like, for example, it's more easier, like say 10 tons, it's just like we will be get like 45 million rupiah when the harvest time is coming. So our capital is only 32, and then we can get like 45 if we have like 10 tons in one harvest time. This is the probability. And well, maybe beside the harvest, we just have like for transport fee, but it's like 200 rupiah, something like that. Because when the harvest, sometimes we using more farmer is using like 3 or till like 5 men together. So we working together to harvest our land, because Indonesia when harvest time, and for the first time we plantation our plant, we working together. So basically when we finish like first, for example, I have 1 hectare, Sim have 1 hectare, and then Gozian have 1 hectare, we will be have cooperating. So we will be working in Sim land first, and then to my land, and then to Gozi land. It's kind of like that. So probably yeah, we can get like the profit if we have like profit for 45 million rupiah, and then we can get like around 13 million rupiah as our profit, and then it's separate to the farmer, and the half is gonna be to the investor, and we can get commission 5% from the farmer and 5% also from the investor. Maybe that's the probably for the example for the rice. And for the rice and the corn, we have unlimited demand in Indonesia, because it's really unlimited. Like in Indonesia for the corn, we need like around 700 tons, 700,000 tons a month. Meanwhile, our produce of corn as a national is only 3 million tons a year. So it's just like we still need to catching up. That's why we still buy import corn from India, from other country. And for the rice itself, it's just like unlimited, because like everybody in Indonesia is eat rice. Even some people in Indonesia, if we not eat rice, we don't eat. Although we only have like eat burger and anything, but if we don't eat rice, we not eat. These people in Indonesia. So the rice is also like unlimited thing, you know. And for the melon and the peanut, we already have like a contract from, we call it Sunpride. Maybe you can see like the Sunpride is like the distribution of fruit in the supermarket. So we already have like 400 tons a month for melon only. So we maybe like preparing for 100 ton for the melon, and the melon have bigger profit from the rice and corn, but the demand is not too big, but it is like have like bigger profit because mostly in Indonesia fruit is more expensive than the main food, you know. But the difference is for the rice and corn we can like keep it in the warehouse like till 1 years, but for the fruit is we need like only like 2 weeks or 1 weeks actually after the harvest, so they need to be selling immediately to the market, or it can become a rotten. But so yeah, this is only for the first time we're doing. And for the shrimp is not for 1 hectare but for half hectare of the shrimp. We can have like 1 million shrimp, and then in the four month we can get the yield, probably we can get like the half of 1 million shrimp, and 1 kilo shrimp is around like right now is like 65,000 rupiah. So for the shrimp probably we can get like 50% like for one time harvest in 4 months in the shrimp, because sometimes the risk in the shrimp is not about the pricing but the stealing. This is the problem for the shrimp, and yeah, we already have it, the mitigation for that, because we will have people who live in our location when the shrimp is getting big and time to harvest. And right now we only selling the easier land and the easier farmer we can get cooperation with for the first time. And then we also only working for the commodity who already have the offtake or the buyer in Indonesia first, because we're not still looking for the global scaling. And when we can get this done, after we finish our 3,600 hectare land, we can go to develop our like around 18,700 hectare land with 23 commodities. But this is maybe like the second pass after we can finish this. Maybe this is I can share you Sim, because this like for our first investor, we choose the easier, you know, and the most not the most profitable, but it's the most sustainable, I think, you know, and the most consistency commodity we can get, because like we have the durian also, but it's like take 2 hours to harvest, but when you get harvest, maybe you can get like 1 billion rupiah a year. But you know, the durian itself like not quite consistent, needed like rice or corn. It's different commodities. And hopefully when we can get contract from the Farmsent, probably you give me the needed for the coffee and anything, yeah, we can make it also. We can make it anything. And probably
Personally, I will buy mango,
yeah, of course.
but Farmsent can buy anything else.
The Gedong Gincu mango, right? The king of mango.
I can't get enough of mango, you know.
Yeah, I remember probably if you guys also have like right now I have like some demand from Europe to have like essential oil. They need it right now, but we will be plant the raw material first, the commodities, and after that we will be sent to the factory and then going to the shipping to the Europe. This is what we're doing right now. So we're looking the demand also from the factory, or maybe you guys have something, because we have many land, we have many farmer, and we all will be using like a school student. We will be have like a school student for farmer field to trying like to walking also, because right now in Indonesia we have like issues like the farmer is already aging, so we need a young farmer to come and doing the regeneration, or otherwise we can get lost all our farmer in 20 years. This is what we already to do right now. Maybe that's all Sim I can say.
Okay. Thank you for that, Sabdo. We also have this on a sheet. Didn't want to confuse everybody with a spreadsheet, but we'll be sending that out for due diligence. Please let us know if you have questions around that. You'll definitely have questions around that because there's going to be a lot of zeros involved in the process. So just to reiterate, basically the NFTs turn the productivity into an NFT. The NFT is for one harvest cycle. We will later on release the functionality to be able to buy more harvest cycles, but for now it's just one harvest cycle with, depending on which commodity it is, either insurance on the commodity itself or an understanding that there is a variability in the yield itself. There's multiple harvests that will happen in a year. You basically give back the NFT and then that capital gets returned to you with the profits on top. Now, this is just with Indonesian pricing, right? When we hand it over to Farmsent and our friend Yog here, the numbers get insane, and actually the demand outside is even higher than the demand in Indonesia. The good thing about the Middle East is they just fly in their food. So like you can put mangoes on a plane, put them in a first-class seat, and they get like mid-air flight meals and stuff. And the Middle East will still buy it at a profitable level. So let's go to that. Now, Yog, please, if you'd like to just take us through the models, any numbers that you have in economics. Of course, we'll provide you all the detail sheets for due diligence, but Yog, please take the stage.
I would actually show you something prior to why we started Farmsent. My co-founder and I, we actually started a Colombian coffee company. It's running for 4.5 years now. Okay. I want to just show you what it is, and then I'll tell you why I showed that to you. So as you can see, our farmers right now are selling this coffee, which is November 2022 batch. And that's the price. That's the price we get. Almost like a typical farmer makes $6 a kilo. They used to make $1.1, $1.2 before we started Binboat. So yes, these coffees are expensive, but market was actually paying more than that. It was even more expensive, and now we are almost getting sold out this batch. Very few stuff left right now. So this company, Binboat, we started 4.5 years, 5 years now running, and it was only trading Colombian coffee to the MENA region. We understood what is the trade model, and then we thought that scaling in this model is a bit of an issue because we are doing everything very Web 2 or typical manual work, right? That we are converting into Farmsent, which is completely blockchain, and all the transactions and everything is going to happen in a cryptocurrency. So I'll show you that. So right now what we are doing, we are creating a farm token, which is going to be used for transactions and also for like governance in a way that we are going to make it like a voting system, so that investors and community can know which countries, which community, which farmers we will work with, and everything is going to be transparent, right? In only the coffee business from Colombia, with 14 villages what we are working with, we are making in a season around $200,000 to $250,000. We haven't scaled in Web 2.0 purposefully. We are now going into Web 3, so it is a lot easier to transfer monies to our farmers in Colombia, Indonesia. These are the two markets we are working on, and in our import markets are Dubai, Saudi, Bahrain, Kuwait. We're exploring Qatar as well. So we are expecting, if you just look at that from a single SKU like coffee, we are making in a season $200,000. Right now we have 122 SKUs. That includes rice, pulses, and tea, vanilla, all those kind of products. At the moment, we are focusing only non-perishable products till we optimize our supply chain. And then, of course, we will jump into products, which is including my favorite mangoes. So it is, it's even more profitable. The best part is, as I gave an example before, that the farmers used to make $1.1 per kg of coffee, and now they are almost making $6. Despite of that, we're making a lot of profit. So we want to also bring the model that you don't need to, put someone down to make a profit. You actually can encourage the farmers to receive more and actually facilitate that and still make a ton of money. So we could say that this is a profit with a purpose, but that's how it that's how the as Sim said, that's how the new models should look like. How does our early investor makes money? Of course, if they quickly exit because the private sale is going on, our public sale is going to be anywhere from 2x to 10x. So far, it looks like it's going to be 3x. But if they continue to hold, what we actually do in our model is that whenever there is a transaction happens, we earn a commission, which is say around 10% or 12%. These amount will be shared among all the token holders in a staking contract. So it's automatically airdrop. In that way, all our investors make automatic money. It's literally looking at your wallet, and it keeps increasing as and when the transaction is happening. So that's our model.
Yeah, so thank you for presenting that, and again, we have more detailed numbers that you can actually go through that we'll provide for due diligence. But as Yog mentioned, this business has developed out of running a supply chain of coffee already, and there's already functional SKUs that have been shipped, and there's returns and all the little kinks that need to be figured out have been figured out on the supply chain side. In Indonesia, that's why we're also running the supply chain already, right? We've already put investment, about $330,000 into the first tranche of shipping these commodities themselves directly to factories, and that same supply chain will be leveraged to ship it out to Farmsent or wherever it needs to go to. All of those things are going to be investment vehicles for investors in this process. So now all of those businesses are the ones that get added in as projects into the Sumati Incubator, right? So again, 8% of the equity of Farmsent and 8% of the equity from 5HarvestO is already going to be given to the Sumati Incubator. And like Yog mentioned, the revenues that these projects make will on the blockchain automatically be transferred through their tokens to anybody who custodies their tokens and stakes their tokens. So because Sumati has those tokens, those revenues will come to Sumati, and then Sumati will have its own token, like an umbrella token. So that anybody who has that token will get all of the revenues, not all of them. There will be profits used to run the business itself, but they will get some of the value that's coming down from those businesses into the token, which will automatically pay out to the investors who are holding the tokens themselves, who right now are just the equity investors. Now, the other thing that happens with this is not only is 5HarvestO an investment vehicle, the Farmsent is an investment vehicle, the commodity supply chain is an investment vehicle, Sumati itself is an investment vehicle. Anybody who comes into these systems, specifically Sumati, will get priority access to investment into the projects that we actually incubate throughout this process, right? Because like we've always mentioned, our goal is not to go out to VCs and raise a bunch of money and then dump it onto retail people. That's the model that's toxic today. FTT is a good example of that. Our model is the people who help support these missions ahead of time and are part of this process get access to stuff early, after which it goes to VCs and it goes out to those bigger players at a higher valuation, right? That's the 2x, 3x that Yog is talking about. That our initial investors get in on the ground floor, and then as the value is increased and sold off to the larger players who are interested in models once they have been tested, they're happy to take it off for that higher valuation. You have the option to sell your tokens to them. You have the option to sell your equity to them. We will not be selling this equity, and we will not be selling this company. we're not here to exit. I'm here to die doing this, right? Because that's also how you maintain the original mission of what's actually being done. Now, the numbers for this, we are going to get you projections on that. We're just taking the existing projections and the existing numbers from the existing projects and building that into a value model. So you'll get a nice, beautiful spreadsheet there as well for all the spreadsheet lovers in the room. But that's in the simplest form, that's the idea. That value flows from real world businesses that add real world value to real world people into a vehicle effectively that in and of itself is adding value in many different ways that you saw earlier. And then that value will on the blockchain be paid back to investors, or the equity value will increase the value of the ownership of the project itself. So that's it. We're not going to complicate things too much. Again, for Sumati, we are raising $1 million for 10% of the, $1.15 million for 10% of the equity. For Farmsent, it's $500,000 for 4% of the equity and the tokens. And same thing for Sumati, you get the tokens as well. You will get the tokens. For 5HarvestO, it's $500,000 for 5% of the equity and 5% of the founders' tokens. Now, the feedback that I got from our banker friends was that we're not raising enough money. So like, why aren't you asking for millions of dollars? Because everybody asks for $10 million for these kind of projects. And our answer to that was, if you need $10 million to make a project that's already profitable, functional, then you're doing something wrong, right? Our ability to be able to leverage these resources, increase the efficiencies, put things onto the blockchain, combine our resources together, bring in expertise and people who are genuinely applying themselves and giving to this whole process allows us to operate at pennies on the dollar compared to all this stuff. Will we raise more money? Yes, down the road. But at the beginning, our goal is not to just take a bunch of money and make these things, dump a bunch of money in like normal companies do and burn it. Our goal is to make these existing businesses, scale them up, and actually get them to a point where the business itself is supporting itself. And then any extra money that gets raised will be put into scaling those businesses, but not the way that VCs like to scale things. Because the bigger players, when they give you a ton of money, their goal is to simply have you grow at all costs, which then goes back to that same model from before. We're going to be growing slower, but at a more sustainable, consistent pace throughout this process. So the way this whole process works, now that you've had this detailed description, and you'll get some more sheets to be able to do due diligence on, and you can book meetings with the founders themselves, and they can answer all your questions and stuff. If you'd like to invest, please reach out to me or Johanna or in the group itself, and we will actually book a meeting with you, help you understand if it's a good fit for you, what is a good fit for you, how much is a good fit for you, and then we will get you the documentation to have the tokens and the equities signed. I'm not going to be able to custody any allocation in this case. Normally I do that for previous investors. This is going to be a first come, first served thing, and once the round is closed, basically. So thank you, and then now we'll open it up for a Q&A session in the room or on Zoom. And if you're watching this and you have questions, again, shoot them to me directly or to Joanna, and then I'll get in touch with you personally.
Thanks for that. It was reasonably simple to follow. Is there a minimum investment for this?
So the minimum investment is actually, we're still pinning it down exactly because there's an admin fee to add investors into the actual equity investments. Right now it's around $5,000, but I would have to get back to you on that depending on what the lawyers say are the costs of adding micro investors into the whole process.
And this is a little sideways question. You were talking about the farmers being the foundation of society. And it just seems around the world, the governments are trying to take out farmers, New Zealand, Europe. Is that a possibility in Indonesia? And if so, does this sort of circumvent that thing that they're trying to do?
So that's a really good question. I'm a Sikh from Punjab, so I know exactly how that feels. My families are being displaced in that process. That's one of the reasons why we're building this, to empower the farmers to be sustainable so they're not enslaved from the governments and every whim that they have. Yes, this is a system that not even circumvents that. It provides a better, more profitable solution to the problem. And at the same time, we're working with the government, right? So as I mentioned last time, but I'll mention it again. We have reached out to the highest levels of government, and this is where Sabdo is very pivotal because he has the APD, which is the Farmers Entrepreneurship Association. Through that, we now have 1.7 million farmers in 32 provinces as part of that association. The Ministry of Agriculture has shown support. They're going to be providing seeds, and Yog is working with the Ministries of Agriculture from these different countries, and Sabdo and us are working with the Ministry of Agriculture from Indonesia. The Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises is going to help out with fertilizer distribution at the beginning, and then eventually we're going to be able to take our fertilizer and feed it into that pipeline. Ministry of Coordinating Economic and Finance is going to support the process. Mandiri Bank and the Sharia Bank of Indonesia are going to be giving loans. LPDB, the Fund for Cooperation from Ministry of Small Enterprise and Cooperation, is going to be part of the process. BAPEPT, which is the financial regulator, has already given the green light to make this process happen. And we have made sure that we have the government as part of this process. So all of that taken into consideration. And I mean, when we take this out to ministers and we present it to them, the first thing they see is votes, right? They see that if they can show the farmers that they're actually helping them in a verifiable way, they get more votes, so they actually win elections, right? Taking all of that into consideration, Indonesia is not at risk of those kind of things. We know a lot of those actions are playing out because there's giant conglomerates coming in and effectively taking farmers who have no other option and putting them in a corner and forcing them forcing the governments to change the regulations to make the process happen. Indonesia is not exactly on the same council or the same table, let's say. We're giving them options and we're incentivizing everybody, right? We're incentivizing ministers, we're incentivizing ministries, we're increasing the GDP of Indonesia, we're helping them to build relationships with countries that are very interested in building relationships with Indonesia. We're helping them bring foreign capital to Indonesia, right? All of these initiatives that we're doing and the way that we're doing it, they're actually as aligned as possible with the initiatives of the government, initiatives of the banks, initiatives of the larger players. So all of that put together, I can't guarantee anything, but it's really, really unlikely that Indonesia would be one of those countries to do that, especially because the farmer base is one of the biggest voting bases in Indonesia that can cause shifts. And Indonesians, they're really, really sweet people, but you don't mess with them being able to feed their kids, right? And Indonesia has a protectionist environment where they protect themselves from foreign corporations. I mean, we can't even access certain websites for a reason because they know allowing foreign corporations to come in and the capital colonialism that they are so used to is not something that happens here. And that's actually wind in our sails effectively. That's a really good question.
From macro level, also what I want to add to what Sin said is that there has been a great support by ministries, governments. I wasn't really expecting that much. I was thinking we would be ignored like any other startups in many countries. And there is a tremendous support by Dubai government, Bahrain government. I met Saudi agriculture minister. Indonesia has been tremendous support. The concept of how to generate these circular economies are really working for most of the countries, and they are very excited. And this is the way forward actually. So we're very happy that governments and organizations are accepting this, and so as common wholesaler, we have already secured 12 wholesalers in Dubai, and they are only buying because of the cause and how we are giving it to how we are giving back to the farmers. So this is really exciting because then this takes us back to Sim's point that the transition is happening from the old model of doing business to the new model of doing business, and we're happy to be accepted actually.
So yeah, just to add my experience to that, like I mentioned, I got to do the loops for the last 5 months of governments and ministries and VCs and exchanges and banks and everybody who's involved in this process, who's interested in this kind of process. And I did not find a single person. I found a lot of questions and a lot of people poked holes in it, which I really appreciate. But I did not find a single person who was not interested in this kind of a model. Like Yog said, this is the transition of the world to a new way of thinking about how to add value to people's lives, because they know that food security is the biggest issue that governments have in many countries. Indonesia has an overabundance of food, and actually there's too much food being produced. So for countries overseas, food security, being a solution to food security that actually supports farmers on the other side, is a win-win for everybody. And for them to be able to show that they're actually investing and participating in sustainable models that actually help people is the future, is the way things are moving forward.
Yeah, we want to encourage the farmer, because until now, farmer become the object of many program of government, but they cannot leverage the quality of life. So that's why we have a group of farmer and try to change. And this is our momentum, because why this is project need to be done in this year, because next year we will have like new government, and I will make sure that our program will be getting interested for whoever will become a president or whoever will become our government. It will be involving in our project. So next year's in the government, we can have like a parallels of like synergizing with our government, with our project. So it also become good for us, because we can have like guarantee for the, right now the president also give the order to the ministry to buying 11 kind of commodities. We already have, like, we can support all of this kind of commodity actually. So yes, this will be good opportunity, I think. And actually we involve many person and many department and government in here. Although all the innovation and all the initiation is by ourselves, and we are doing this in the small scale up, but I think in the politic years, everything, the party or maybe like the candidate needs something to bring up in the media. So they will be trying to find anything good initiation in Indonesia, like Sim says, to raise their vote. This is what we thinking and what we're looking for, I think, for now. This is only what I want to add. Oh yeah, and also I want to like add like Sims. This is very new. We already have like our certificate for have a warehousing rented, SRG. We already have it. I want to show you. So yeah, this is the certification from Bapepti itself. So basically, if we have a warehouse and we put our yield in the warehouse, this our commodity can become a collateral to the bank, the government bank. We already get the certification right now, and we can do this in all of our around in Indonesia. So it will be more safe, because we can make sure like all of our commodity have the market itself. So before we go to the factory, we already have the money from the bank itself for 70%, and after that we can sell it to the factory with the good pricing. So this is only I want to add it. Sim. Thank you, guys.
So yeah, this is how we're doing this. That it's being done. So I'll just give you a story, right? When we met Sabdo, we're like, Sabdo, who are you? And he's like, I'm a farmer. And we're like, well, that's nice. That's good, because you're building solutions as a farmer. And then we slowly realized Sabdo is actually the founder of APD, which is the association that we talk about with all these farmers inside, 1.7 million farmers. Not even farmers, members from different villages. And then slowly, Sabdo became our touch point to the government, because that association aligns with the initiatives that the government has. And so through that, we actually got to reach out to the different layers of government. And then we realized, wait, Sabdo is the government as far as we're concerned, right? And it was interesting, because the way that the government is structured in Indonesia, there's the president, then there's a cabinet who turn over every few years. But then there's echelon 1 and echelon 2. Those are the people that do not change. They're the people who actually effectively make the decisions on what should be done in the country, and they know how to run the country. They've gone through presidents, and they know how to keep things stable. That's why Indonesia is one of the most stable economies in the world. When we presented this to them, Within minutes, they got it. And within an hour, they had already opened as many doors as necessary. And they'd outright said, look, whatever you need done on whichever level of government or whichever level of private industry, let us know, and we snap our fingers and we make that happen for you, because this is something that actually helps our people on the ground. These are not people that are worried about re-election. These are the people that are worried about legacy and protecting their country from all the violations that happen outside in the world. That is what led into us having all these relationships with governments, and Subdo has privately done that in a massive way. They love it. So when you tell them that we're increasing the GDP of the country, you're instantly aligned with all of the initiatives from the multiple layers of government, from the president all the way down. Then when you connect it with the digitization of the economy, that is one of the highest order initiatives that exist in Indonesia and across the world. This is a system that is ripe for digitization because there isn't existing decision bias around these things, right? Gojek hasn't gone and taken it over. We're not fighting any industry players. If anything, industry players are looking towards this and saying, can you involve us in this process and help us, can you bring us into the process? Ministers and the people who are worried about elections, they're interested in votes. This helps them get votes. As a matter of fact, like Subdo mentioned, getting this out into the public and getting this to people, us doing it in participation with them is a win-win for them. The deploying of these new models safely is a huge piece of feedback that came back to us. They said, there's too many scam tokens, there's too many people losing their money in this space. If you're going to deploy something, deploy something safe that we can actually understand and verify. And then we'll give you regulatory clarity, we'll actually give you regulatory protection to be able to do this in the country. And all of the different ministries that we've reached out to have agreed that this is something that is compliant with all the regulations now and the ones that are coming up. The city of Denpasar partnered with us because they realized this like the Sumati model of bringing in talent and actually incubating them there is one of the best ways that they can digitize a city. To the point, like I mentioned earlier, they not only agreed to partner with us, they also took our pitch and took our model to the Ministry of Tourism of Bali and aligned the Ministry of Tourism's plan to be able to attract high quality talent here, right? So on all different levels, they're interested in this process. And for us to build relationships with these extremely powerful countries that where we're solving the food security issues for them, that kind of a relationship is mutually beneficial for both sides. And we have now Nigeria reached out, and there's all these countries that are reaching out and saying, hey, we'd love to be part of this process because this is exactly what we're trying to do. And if you're telling us you're going to do this for us and we just get to put our name on it, we're happy to put our name on it. As a matter of fact, we're happy to open any doors for you and get you access to things that you actually need. And finally, the things like the getting rid of organic waste and turning it into carbon credits, and that's going to require us to bring a carbon credit system to Indonesia. Even initiatives like that, there isn't enough knowledge and execution skills here yet that allow people to be able to access those things, whereas us providing those things are hugely beneficial and something that's very lucrative to the people who want to get involved in that whole process. On the flip side of that, when I got to reach VCs and investors and put this in front of them, they instantly got it because they're like, okay, we're trying to learn about Web3 and you're telling me that there's a way for me to participate in this space that meets the mandates of our funds because you're backing it with farms and mines and commodities, all the things that our funds already invest in. You're allowing us to enter this space in this new way. But to them, which most people don't actually consider, the even more important piece was that the social impact was clear, that they can see. And it's not even clear. We're going to make media about this, put their logo on it and send it to them as a thank you, saying thank you for investing into these projects. Thank you for supporting these projects. Here's marketing and media back that proves what you're doing, and you can share it out to your investor networks. And for them, social impact has become one of those things that is mandated inside of their investment funds by the investors that they already have. The other piece that investors and VCs and everybody loves is it's a very transparent model. Like if you want, come along, come meet the farmers, ride on the truck to the factory. We'll put a little bed down, you can sleep at the factory. Okay, we'll put you on the ship and send you to Bahrain if you want. It'll be a 2-month trip, right? So there's complete clarity around the system itself. You can actually understand how it works, but also there's clarity through the blockchain. So you can actually check all of these things happening and it happens in an automatic fashion. Now, on the money side of things, these are massive markets. Massive markets. These are multi-trillion-dollar markets, only to be scaling up as food prices go up and commodity prices go up. Entering these markets in these new models that are even more efficient and doing things that actually allow those markets to scale is something everybody's interested in. Nobody wants to step on the toes of something that makes them more money and allows them to enter these giant markets. The other piece, when we explain like how we've already executed these businesses and how we're going to be executing them going forward, people just get confused because they're like, this is pennies. Compared to how Silicon Valley does it, this is pennies that you're doing it for. They don't understand that we're also in Indonesia. Our labor costs are nothing. Our ability to pool resources and the efficiencies that we bring from the traditional corporate world allow us to be able to implement things for pennies on the dollar, right? The potential for growth is insane, and that's not at all considering the speculative pumps that happen in crypto. We don't even care about those, but we don't talk about them. But these things allow you to access commodities and real world assets and still benefit from the speculative pumps that happen within crypto. Once these tokens are launched, they will multiply in value like crazy at some point, along with the market, and then they will crash, like the market always crashes. But in that process, you get to double dip and get into the crypto space of things. And VCs and the larger investors, they understand this in a very fundamental sense because they can invest from sovereign wealth funds, but they can benefit from the pumps of crypto. That's a win-win for them. And Sumati was very interesting because Sumati, when I presented this to people, they could understand that, hey, so you're telling me I invest one time into a business and the business will grow in its equity valuation and in its dividends as all the business underneath it scales. Partially, they were like, that's not even how you should structure it. You should take more profit. You should do something else to extract more value. And then we just cancel the appointments with those guys. But but that way of investing allows people to not have to constantly go out and reach projects. Because one of the biggest things that happens in the digital asset space is you can't access a project on the ground floor. You simply can't. Unless you're one of the people from the big investor clubs or VC clubs that give you special access. Getting in on the ground floor is where you actually get those kind of returns that are in the X's, not in the percents. And to be able to access that through a single investment vehicle that is actually verifiably creating impact is something that's interesting to all the VCs and investors across the world. So I have not found anybody yet who doesn't want to be part of this process. Yes, there are regulations that need to become clear by the end of 2023 for the really big sovereign wealth funds and the giant VCs to enter these spaces. We're happy with that because we want to execute these business models up to a point and make them more profitable before they come in. Yes, there is a risk. Every business always comes with a risk, right? There is a risk that something goes wrong or a government changes their mind or we completely mess it up. Nobody's saying that there aren't any risk. Everything comes with a risk, but as far as I've seen, we've put our own money into this thing, and like Yoga mentioned, some of the businesses have been running for 5 years and have been profitable. So these are the lowest risk type investments that we can bring to people and run them ourselves and execute them for pennies. So I just want to close off on, if you want to see change in the world, you got to do something about it. That's it. You want to see a better world? Do something. It's as simple as that, right? Asking, even sitting there and meditating and visualizing it, thank you so much for doing that. That adds energy to a certain vision of how the world should be. We appreciate you, Ubudians. Thank you so much for doing that, right? But if you're somebody who has skill sets and you can help out, oh, we love the skill sets. If you have somebody who has energy and time and love who wants to put into this process and help out, fantastic. We'll get you jobs. We'll get you, if you're an expert and you actually want to be part of this process, we'll bring you deal flow. We'll bring you businesses that you can try and test and be part of, and then they will hire you to do a business. If you're somebody who's like, look, I don't want to be working on extra stuff. I got enough stuff going on, but I have money that I need to protect. Invest, share, get it out to people, right? All of these things are functional, actionable things that many of them are very easy to do and they're completely free to be able to bring that world to fruition. And this isn't something that's we're not gonna solve the world's problems within the next year. But within the next 8 years, as this whole transition happens, these are the kind of systems that are going to actually manifest the world that's going to be better. And beyond that space, the critical mass of these things is going to take over. And whichever systems are the most efficient, the most valuable, the most kind of adopted by people are going to be the ones that actually come to fruition. for me, this is part of my legacy. Simple as that. I realized, I learned from a lot of older, wiser people that you get to a certain age in your life where you stop worrying about you and you start worrying about what world you're going to leave behind. And it's beautiful having, you know, all these beautiful people working on all these things, because they're people that look beyond themselves and they're dedicating themselves to a lifelong mission of leaving a world that's better than them. And many of us did it individually in corners, and now we're bringing those resources together. But this is the world that we're going to leave, and that's going to be the legacy of what we do. And if anything, this is one of the kind of exercises, or one of the results that came out of this whole kind of touring this around to different places, was the fact that it presents Indonesia as one of the innovators in this space in a way that improves the world. And there's many other countries that are focused on just the digital side of things. And for me, it's nice going to sleep knowing that this is how we're doing it, and then seeing the people's faces whose lives we're going to improve. And we're not just going to go do this in the background. We have media teams that are going to go to the ground and show you what's happening and show you the impact, so we can have this reach out to people, even just share that. Okay, so I'm not going to go too deep into my rant about things, because I love to rant. I can go off on one if you really want me to. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this. Please reach out if you want to be part of this process, if you want to contribute your time, your energy, your money, you want to help get the word out there, you want to do anything to help create this better world, we're happy to accept that help. And yeah, appreciate your time. See you guys next time.